Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to What If, Mind Mapping Future Trends and Predictive Thought Networks for Decision Management and Impact Assessment. We are going to cover a wide range of examples. It's going to be a very productive session. I just want to introduce the rest of the panel and thank all of you for joining us today. My name is Shelley Hayduck, and I'm co-hosting today's event with Matt Caton, our Director of Customer Solutions.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's going to be a great webinar today. We do have, as Shelley mentioned, many different brain examples to share, so it's going to be very exciting.
All right, great. And we also have Tracy Barr. I don't know if her webcam's coming across, but she is participating actively on the Q&A. So in terms of what we want to cover today, there's really one consistent in your business and home life, and that is change. We live in a world that is constantly changing. We have markets that change. Our lives change. So this is a very interesting aspect of the brain that most people don't consider, and when they do, it opens up a whole new universe, and that is creating a visual network of thoughts that actually enable you to do impact assessment. Now, we have a number of clients that use the brain very specifically for this purpose. Clients from the Department of Defense, highly operational shipping and transportation companies, where if there is a problem, they can immediately triangulate to other solutions. IT management, very similar in that way, contingency and disaster response. So what you can do is create a network of thoughts that help you gain a broader context on a situation, and what that will enable you to do is to make the best possible choices. The brain can't magically solve everything, but it will enable you to make the best possible choices given a particular scenario. So the first couple examples that I want to talk about are somewhat predictive. The brain that I have open right now is actually called Global Watch. It's Global Brain. It is something that we have done with some of our defense partners. Now, I do want to let you know that this brain is a little bit dated and purposely so because we're not going to be showing, obviously, any classified information. But I thought I'd start off with this brain just to give you an idea of the broad implications and the power of visualization on a global scale. So for those of you that are new to the brain, pieces of information in the brain are what we call thoughts. And a thought can represent any type of digital information. One of the great things about the brain is the ability to organize your information under many different dimensions. So I just clicked on geospatial. So this brain is actually designed for homeland security. So we've got many different categories here. I could go into cyber security and cyber terrorism. I could go into the Department of Defense and look at all these departments. And the idea is I can browse through many different dimensions, but ultimately any information I need will be connected to all that's relevant with the brain's visual connections. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the geospatial view. So being able to navigate by region is also interesting. Now, in this particular example, you guys might be wondering, what tool I'm in. They're all brains, whether we're going to be in Team Brain Server, Brain EKP, or the Brain Pro desktop. The idea here is really to focus on the network of connections. This particular brain happens to be in our server product. That's why you're noticing it's coming through a web browser. So every time I click on a thought, it's going to trigger all related areas. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Middle East. And of course, below that, I've got the various countries that I might be interested in as an intelligence agent. The other thing that's great about whether you're using personal brain or the server product is each thought in your brain actually has a unique thought identification and URL, which means we can do very interesting things like link to thoughts based on a map. So for instance, and you can see in my content window below, if I want to click on Afghanistan, I can click there, and the brain above is actually synchronizing. So just a little bit of more advanced features. We have a lot of people that like to do this on their intranet sites. They'll put a map of the company or some visual graphic below and hot link to thoughts. So You can also think of your brain as sort of, there's a lot of bi-connectionality to it. You're linking to data sources, but you can have data sources linked to the brain also. So what I want to do is simulate a level of situational analysis that is highly critical, so you can get a sense of how the brain can deliver information to you on any type of project in a just-in-time emergency response type manner. So we just clicked on Afghanistan, and one of the advantages of the brain is the ability to integrate a wide range of data sources. So we've got stuff here on drone research in PDF forms. We've got things about disease outbreaks in IE, and we've got other news feeds come in. So the idea is I have access to all these resources regardless of source. Now, I do want to let you know, of course, these are, again, as I mentioned, we're going through stuff in the brain that it's happened in the past, even though, ironically, we're talking about predictive networks. At one time, this network was predictive, but so you can get a sense of, kind of how you can use it in these high-stakes situations. So just based on this display, what I can do is get involved and brief myself or brief my team very quickly about a problem. So if I have a new group of people that are just deployed to this area, I can very easily see what the key issues are because my brain's telling me. The other thing that I have is we have lateral connections, which we call jump thoughts. Now, jump thoughts are actually thoughts that are related to the active thought, but not necessarily a subcategory. So in this particular brain, we were actually visualizing the FBI's 22 most wanted terrorists, and of course that takes you into another area. So that I could have moved here and looked through people of interest and got back to understanding, okay, well, I need to be aware of this particular person operating, citizenship in this country, and when I'm in these countries, to be aware. And then, of course, you can have thought types for, the status of that individual. So this is just to give you an idea of how quickly. Now, imagine you can have various reports. You can go on Google News on Afghanistan. But what we're trying to offer people is a highly sculpted view of information that enables you to digest an incredibly complex situation in a more intuitive manner. And that's why we do have a lot of intelligence agencies using the software. We have a lot of cardiac surgeons who learn using the brain. So if you are in an information-intensive, high-stakes situation, the brain will, in fact, collapse the time to knowledge. So let's just go ahead, and I can click around further. So if I want to, go ahead and click over to terrorists, and that's under the FBI, people, immediate threats. What you'll see here again is the ability of the brain, unlike a typical file folder system, whether we're talking Box.net, Dropbox, Google Drive, or your traditional folder system, in those types of systems, you're really going to be limited to just displaying information in a linear fashion. I would basically have to decide, where would this one individual fit? What folder would I want to confine this information to? But that's actually the opposite of impact assessment and contingency mapping. The whole idea with contingency mapping and impact assessment is to see all the relevant contingencies. And unless you have an associative interface like TheBrain that shows you all these connections, you're going to be missing things. And, you really don't want to overlook anything in a lot of these situations. So I'm going to go ahead and click up to the FBI. Another way that you can use the brain for, understanding future trends and predictive thought networks is to actually map out a lot of different pieces, and that can be within an organization. People mapping, doesn't have to necessarily be a terrorist network, of course. It can be your HR network or your IT team, or if you're the United States government, just mapping out agencies and how they work together. We do a lot of work on urban planning and with municipal governments as well in that capacity. So the idea with this brain is we can see kind of which agencies operate together. So here's a whole listing of the United States intelligence community. So I can click on the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I'm just going to make the screen appear below. And you can see that I've got links to web pages, documents, and I can go ahead and look at that website. I also have PDFs and PowerPoints that I can launch, and I can see which person, and again, these are past leaders who are connected to. And of course, the DIA is related to the DoD, which also has its own area, which takes us to executive departments in the executive branch of the U.S. federal government. And that's where I can start browsing by state, by local, by judiciary branch, by legislation branch. So a lot of companies that are growing by merger or acquisition, a lot of organizations, a lot of companies that work with an extensive partner network, creating a brain that shows how all these pieces move together can be really quite interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and let's just go over to emergency response. And we've actually, one of the things we can do is, of course, search in the brain. So if I just want to type in the first couple letters of a search, mad cow disease in this case, we're talking about food suppliers, that will take me to the thought that I need to go to really quickly. But what's great about the brain is I can see that that relates to a Canadian food supplier and also Chinese food supplier, and that takes me under food supply threats. So, and this is a whole other area. So the idea is I can start with a general search, but get up to speed very quickly by using these visual connections in the brain. And of course, in terms of the different ways of looking at information, we've got the sort of standard view, but if I right-click on my background, I can also move into outline view. Now, outline view is quite nice because it enables me to sort of expand and collapse a particular area of information, which might be helpful. So if I want to continue to map the brain out and look at the information as far as food supply threats, this gives me a little bit more of a lateral outline. And of course, I can change this back to normal and do something called expanded view, where expanded view lets me have a little bit more customization on my thoughts here, where I can also, there was actually a tainted pet food issue, and that was with Menu Foods recall. And this is something else that was mapped out, sort of the supply chain, where this particular tainted pet food, how did it happen? And it turned out that it was from the wheat gluten, which was I could open up that area and see what that's connected to, and what that does, in terms of if people eat these kinds of things. So this is sort of a one view that enables me to kind of look at things in a broader perspective. So that's just one example. I'm going to go now to a personal brain example here, and I'm going to go ahead and go into 2020 ideas, what happens next. I'm going to launch my personal brain, and this particular brain was actually based originally on an old Forbes article about what's happening in the next 10 years. Let me just float my window here so we can look at this. So really what you can do in your brain is create thoughts for all the key areas of your future, your company's future, your personal future that you're interested in. So this particular brain, it's got stuff on geographical trends. So just like the other brain, we can go in through geography. So let's look at Asia, for instance, or and so on and so forth. And then I can click on any particular area in the brain, and that's going to launch all relevant information. So in this particular brain, we're talking about the China hitting a Great Wall, which is interesting because, of course, the Chinese markets are, the bubble has sort of burst, so there's all kinds of information on that. So this is where, in addition to, just talking about ideas, you want to use the brain to aggregate the data that supports that idea. Is this really true? Has China, in fact, hit a wall? Has the bubble burst? And based on that, I can go ahead and launch articles. So, for instance, I can launch the CNN article from JP Morgan, which is a little dated, but it's going to go ahead and launch the site. And I can read this article and look at the information. The other thing that's great about the Brain is these aren't just static reading tools. You can create a Brain to deploy to people, but I can actively build this. So I'm actually going to go up to Options and use the Brain Search Web to search for this topic. It's kind of an odd phrase to search for. So maybe I'll say China, Asian. Actually, I'll change my search to Asian markets. And, of course, I'll get all kinds of information. I can go to the news area. And there's, of course, lots of stuff going on in the Asian market. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this information from the International Business Times. So just give it a second to load. So there's a couple aspects to predictive thought networks. Number one is creating thoughts that are, in fact, hypotheses or hypothetical scenarios in your brain. And then based on that scenario, you want to link all relevant contingencies that can happen. The other aspect of a predictive thought network is gathering the data to support a prediction. And you might actually decide your prediction is not valid based on the data, or valid, or leave it open to interpretation. Let me go back to Fortune here and just link a website. Okay, so there's an interesting article here on those powerful women in business. So let's add a thought for women in business as far as where that's going and where we see that happening. And now all I need to do is simply drag and drop this. And I can drag and drop this on the thought or below, and I'll go ahead and make that connection. And of course I can continue my search. So for instance, if I want to go ahead and continue my search, and maybe I want to change this thought, instead of calling it China hits the Great Wall, let's just call this Asian market progress. So what's going on in the Asian market? So now what I can do is, once again, go ahead and do my web search. And I'm going to grab another site. Okay, and it looks like, so here's an article that's saying that there's a little bit of recovery that we're seeing. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop that in. So, and you can see that something that might have been a problem, you just change the thought name, you adjust it. So these brains are not meant to be static representations of anything in your business. These are things that you want to constantly adjust and garden and tweak, with the current circumstances. So what I want to do here is I'm simply going to drag and drop this into the Brain. And you can see that what that's done is it's created a link to CNBC, and from there I can go ahead and launch that article. Of course, I'll just relaunch it so you can see. Oopsie, so let me go ahead and grab that link and make sure the link is relevant. Some sites, actually, I think there's something going on with MSNBC, so let's go ahead and grab another site from Reddit, actually. So this looks a lot better here. And basically all we're doing is we're simply dragging and dropping a link into my Brain. So there you go. So now you can see that the Asian markets are progressing after the yen devaluation, and I've got that link below. The other thing that I can do that's kind of interesting is if I want to get any information on this site or make notes, I can go ahead and do that. So let me just go ahead and go back and grab another article as well. So now I'm simply going to drag this Bloomberg article and I'm going to drop it under my Asian market. So now I've got that link in my Brain. And you can see in the thought area, this is what I wanted to show you. This is the actual link to the site. If there is a particular insight that I want to, highlight, like for instance, maybe it's this quote, I can copy this and even paste that into the notes section. So I've got that. And the other thing that's interesting about this is the Asian stocks, of course, are related to Greece. So I'm going to make a new thought in my brain called Greece. And I want to go ahead and connect Greece right up to the top of this section in my brain, because Greece is, of course, a very important story as well. And then I also probably want to put that under geographical trends. That would go under Europe. So I'm going to go ahead and make a connection here. So now you can see how I'm sort of building that section. And from there, I can go ahead and do searches as well. The other thing that's interesting is I can do Twitter searches as well. So if I just want to do a search for everything on Greece, I can, or I can do a specific hashtag on Greece. I can do a specific account. I'm just going to go ahead and preview that information on Twitter before I add it, so I can actually go look at what people are saying about Greece. And you can see there's a lot of stuff out there, in fact, a lot of very interesting articles. And one of these articles, A New Chance for Greece, this is a source from Twitter. That looks very interesting. And again, this is because the brain enables me to do an actual search. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add this article on A New Chance for Greece. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop that into my brain. And you can see that I've got that in. Now, the other thing that could be interesting as well, if we go back to Twitter, there are a number of different hashtags, on the Greece crisis and so forth. I can actually go ahead and just set up a hashtag as a thought in my brain. So let me go and do that as well. So let me go to Twitter search. And in this case, I might just want to go ahead and add Greece in here and create a thought. So now what I've done is I actually have a thought that is constantly going to be searching that hashtag for me on the Greek issue. And of course I can get more specific, Greek debt crisis, maybe it's more about the Syrian refugees, all that kind of stuff. That's also very interesting. And what this is going to do is it actually is going to launch that Twitter hashtag as well. So you can see very easily that has appeared. And of course, if you're auto-logged into Twitter as I am, I can go ahead and just follow these people right away or retweet anything. But I've got that in its relevant context. So I've got online news sources, I've got stuff from Twitter, and of course the other thing I can do is I can create content and documents. I can take down, any ideas I have, research how Syria is affecting the Greece economy. Now, of course, the brain has spell check, so I can go ahead and correct those with capitalizers. So that's just something that I can make a note for myself. I can also go ahead and create a document. So if I want maybe an analyst wanting to do a report on, whether we should open up a new office in Greece, I can sort of right-click on this thought and select to add an attachment. And now I'm going to go ahead and add a Word document. And then here's my thought for the Greek economic analysis. And so now, all my thoughts that I put in the brain, I'm going to use them and create my own economic analysis. So I'm just going to save that and save it right into my brain. So now you can see I've got that Word document as well. And, I can continue to build and grab information from my desktop or outside of my brain as well. So for instance, if I want to go back to my Asian area on the Asian market progress, I actually have a Word document on China. So I want to drag and drop that and drop it in with all my other information. So when I drag and drop the document, what that does is that creates a shortcut to where that document might be. And now what I can do is I can actually go ahead and right-click to move or copy or delete the file. So in this case, I'm going to move this file into my brain so it's no longer on my desktop, but I have it under Asia progress. And of course, stuff gets old. I can come in here, especially if you're doing news articles like this CNBC article for whatever reason didn't link properly. I'm just going to go ahead and forget that. And there's another article that's no longer relevant about the Chinese bear market. So I'm going to forget that. So things to remember too, as you're adding things in your brain, you can delete them, you can link or unlink. All that kind of stuff is very easy as well. And then the other thing that you can do as you're kind of keeping an eye on these trends is you can create a pin. So if I want to focus on Greece, and if I want to focus on the Asian markets in particular, I'm going to go ahead and create these pins. So now, regardless of where I am in my brain, if maybe I am looking at stuff on the International Monetary Fund and or maybe just other things that I'm doing, I can always see that, these are my top priorities, Greece and the Asian market analysis. So from there, I can always go ahead and click on Greece, click on that thought I made on the Asian markets, and move very quickly to those areas and get the full context. So that's a little bit on how you build a network of thoughts that's really designed to help you understand, change where you're going. Now what I want to do is I want to bring it down a little bit and go to more specific corporate examples, how to use the brain in your daily business for decisions like making the best hire or maybe choosing what market path. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open my brain here. And this particular brain has a section on business. And what you want to do if you are using the brain for contingency mapping and analysis is create thoughts for all key domains in your business. You can see under my business, I've got clients, I've got engineering, operations, sales. I'm going to go ahead and click on operations rather. Every time I click on a thought, that's going to trigger all related pieces of information. And I mentioned earlier, and it was more in the context of global analysis, but people are very important in a brain. So for instance, I've got Harold, Director of Operations, attached to that, and I can see he reports to Barbara, but he also manages Bill, Sam, and Vicki Waters. So what this enables me to do is to see the people that are responsible for different departments as well. And that'll also help me if I need to make a decision. I know who to talk to, or if we're missing an important person, we know who to hire. So for instance, in the sales area, I can click on Terry Mason, and I can see he's managing all these different people. The blue with the little, director icon, they're director level. The red is executive level. So if I click on Nick Taylor, for instance, I can see he's working on all these accounts, reporting to two people. That's a little weird. This is where I might want to make a change and maybe unlink him from Terry. Reporting to two people doesn't really work. So now he's just going to report to Jim, who reports to Barbara, and Nick is going to be much happier. So these are the kinds of things that by mapping it all out in the brain, you'll get that broader context and you can go ahead and look at information. But let's go back to the operations area here, and I'm going to go into human resources specifically. One of the things that you're doing as you're growing with human resources, you're making decisions based on people. So we have a lot of recruiters, a lot of companies that are growing that use the brain to help make decisions on who to hire. So that's kind of another example, a little bit more practical than trying to solve all the world's global crises. But it just give you an idea of all these different ways to use the brain. So I'm going to click on open positions in this brain. And in this case, this company has a couple open positions. They are looking to hire and possibly outsource 2015 web designers, so people that they can use this year for web design. There is an open position for a VP of engineer. So that's the other thing we have. And then as well, a director of e-commerce. So there's also a lot of data that goes in when people hire within a company. First of all, there's sort of narrowing down the recruits and then making sure everyone has the right information. So in this particular brain, you'll notice that I've got some little sub-thoughts. These are called tags. And what we're doing in this brain is we're actually tagging different candidates how we feel about them. So in this case, I can see Asha Deping is a high investment candidate, meaning obviously Asha's going to require a lot of money if we want to hire her. However, she is a top-tier candidate, whereas I can see Greg, no information on whether he's top-tier or high investment, so I assume he's not, but he is a database programmer, and someone like Sarah we could work with, but only as a remote employee. So these are where these tags are going to come in to enable you to add additional attributes to a thought. So let's just go ahead and click on Asha. Now Asha would potentially be a VP of engineering. We actually have her connected to legal just because we might be doing a background check. So here we have links to background check. And of course, I can just launch that document and it's going to open in its native application. I have a spreadsheet for interview score. I can launch that. Her resume, go ahead and launch that. And I also have a link to her profile on Monster. So a lot of these job sites, and you can do all kinds of things, link to candidates' blogs. So by organizing all this information in one place, I can very easily compare Asha to, let's say, Greg. Whereas Greg, we've got an interview score for a checklist and his interview report versus maybe Daniel as well. And that's where I can start using the brain to make a decision. Maybe I'll even add some tags, whereas Daniel's not going to be available for a 6-month time frame. So I've just added that tag in my brain. Daniel is a database programmer, which is fabulous. I'm going to tag him with that. Now, the other reason these tags are fabulous is, let's say I have a project coming up and I need someone immediately. They don't have to be a VP. They don't have to be top-tier candidate, but they do need to know how to program a database. So I'm simply going to click on this tag here, database programmer, and that's going to actually show me every thought in my brain that has that tag. And the cool thing about that is my brain's helping me leverage internal resources because, yes, I can hire Greg, but we also have someone right here who's a manager, who's actually working on a new IT project. She's reporting to Bill. Sandra's a database programmer, so maybe I'll, connect with Sandra and get that done. So that's where the brain, building this network of connections, when the time comes right to pull the trigger on a project or what have you, having it all organized and tagged will really enable you to make a great decision. I like to use thought tags for time frame, people skills, as well as investment. So for instance, if I want to know everything that I need that is going to take 6 months, there's going to be a 6-month time frame, I have a tag for that. And so now I can go ahead and then go ahead and look at that particular project and get access to the documentation and so forth. Or if I get budget, I want to know everything in my brain that I've tagged as high investment. So which projects maybe need to be scaled back, which can we move forward with now that I know my budget. And so that's the way that works. And let me just go ahead and go into another area. You can use the brain to start brainstorming. What you do is you create a thought, ideas for market expansion, and then you go ahead and start adding all these key thoughts in your brain. Once you've added the thought, you can then go ahead and create a thought type or tag for each of your thoughts. So in this example here, ideas for market expansion, there are basically 7 ideas. I can acquire a company, I can develop technology partners, I can hire more sales reps, I can increase online advertising, increase print, open up a new office in Asia, or I can do my quality audit on customer service. So these are different things that I can do. Now, if I click on any of these, or as you can see, certain thoughts have different colors. Now, this is green lighted, so is this. It's green lighted because it's a 6-month time range and it's low cost. Same with this project, low cost. So in this case, you can sort of notice a trend. Everything that's tagged as low cost automatically gets green lighted, whereas stuff like acquisition of company B, I've got that typed as a hot topic because it's a 6-month time frame and a high investment. And so the way you add tags is, let's say increasing advertising would be a high investment. I'm just going to activate that and add a tag. And let's say that it's something we want to do in 6 months. So now it's got 2 tags there. The other thing that I can do is I can give this a thought type. So let's say for whatever reason, even though this is a high investment and it's going to take 6 months, I've gotten the okay from my CEO. So I'm going to make this a green lighted project. So now you can see that I've created a thought type for that. And thought types and tags are different. Thought type, you can only have one thought type per thought, and that gives it the overarching color, icon, attributes. Matt will talk a little bit more about thought types and tags in his section and show you how to create those. Tags are a little bit more frivolous. They're almost like database attributes. I can have multiple tags per thought. And by the way, we do have options for whether you display your tags or not. I actually like to see them, especially when I'm doing decision management, so I can look at the pros and cons. However, that being said, if I want to go into preferences, let me just go ahead and select preferences. Oh, GoToWebinar is not going to let me do that. Sometimes it doesn't let me grab certain menus. Maybe it'll work for Matt. But there is a preferences menu where you can hide the tags. You only see them in your tags area when you click on them. So that's just something you can kind of decide what level of visualization you want to turn on or off in your brain. And so that's the way that works. The other thing that you can use your brain for is pro-con analysis as well as SWOT analysis. So I want to go ahead and show you 2 examples of that as well in another example brain. And this brain is JT Apparel. They are a sort of edgy clothing and fitness company where they make sports apparel. So in this particular brain, everything from product design and research to business development to their distribution channels is all mapped out and visualized. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on product design and research and go ahead and select winter apparel. So one of the things that winter apparel, the designers are working on is products that are breathable but warm and also waterproof. So there's a new particular ingredient called Gore-Tex that they want to use for their jackets. Now, one of the things that's great about the brain is, again, this particular idea or concept, in this case it's a fabric, can be organized under many different cases. So we've got a link to a competitor that uses it here. It's under synthetic fibers. It's a waterproofing ingredient, so it's connected to that. It's something that we're considering for our yoga apparel, so I can see it connected there. And of course, we're talking about it in the winter apparel line context. So here's an example of more of a product design sense and how you use the brain to gain that much more intelligent aspect. Now let's talk a little bit about pro-con. So we haven't determined if we are going to use Gore-Tex for our next line of jackets. So let's look at some pros. Some pros would be they're one of the best waterproofing fabrics. They have a level of brand recognition within the sports industry. That would be great, and they're the market leader. So now what would the cons be? Higher prices. They might increase the cost of making our jackets. We don't really have a business relationship. So based on my cons and my pros, I can kind of look at these thoughts and make a decision. And the other thing that's great about the brain is you can change the view of this, as I showed you earlier. So if we want to go to outline view, cons and pros and cons, that becomes a little bit clearer to see. So I can kind of say, well, you know what? There's 3 pros, there's 2 cons, let's go ahead and move forward with this. Or, I need more research, let's go ahead and use the brain to then research how we establish a business relationship. So there's many directions that you can take when you've mapped your information out in this manner. And the other thing that we can do is do SWOT analysis as well. So what you're going to do is create thoughts for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. In this particular area of their brain, they're actually utilizing SWOT analysis to decide whether they should open up an office in China. So you can see the way this opens up. Now, in fairness to all of you guys, you might be wondering, well, how do I create a brain on SWOT analysis? How do I do this? So basically, I'm going to go ahead and show you how easy that is in a new brain. But let me go ahead and change this back to normal view so you can see how this looks when it's all done. The other thing that's great about it is something that is in one section of your brain can now be linked to something else, like time lag is linked to labor force, which is actually an opportunity. So things can be connected, or stuff that is weaknesses, relocation fees. Well, we don't just have a thought in the brain that's like a Visio diagram. These things are connected to data. Is this really a weakness? Because we found out, we just linked that renting corporate homes can be very easy. And we also found a fabulous executive relocation company. And of course, we've got that connected, and we can launch that site in TheBrain, and same thing with renting corporate homes and Business Journal. So something that was a weakness can actually now be changed. So I want to come over here, and we're going to move the relocation stuff as a strength. So I'm going to now create a new, move it here. Relocation, executive relocation, and make a connection there. And I'm actually going to unlink this from weaknesses. So as your research changes, stuff that you thought might be a problem are not necessarily a problem anymore. I don't know if it's necessarily a threat. Maybe this goes under operations, but we now know that it'll be not as difficult as we thought because we're working with some agencies. So that's the way. So if I wanted to create a new brain, let's just say I'm just going to call this brain SWOT for a new product. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I can just go ahead and start typing. So strength. And I'm using the semicolons to indicate multiple thoughts, and I'm also numerating my thoughts so they appear in a certain order. So weaknesses, and of course, spell weaknesses properly. Opportunities. I'll start with these two thoughts so you can see what that looks like in my brain. And then let's continue with opportunities, and then threats, which is number 4. So I just wanted to build this from scratch so you can see how easy this is to come in and create. So now from there, strengths, maybe this is a sort of separate brain from JT Apparel, and they're deciding whether to launch a new high-end jacket. So a strength might be entering new market space, increasing brand awareness, but a weakness might be the costs, high cost of entry for new product development. So I've gone and done that. And so the other thing that I can do now, again, because I'm not just working in a bubble, the brain's designed for data, working with data, is I can take this thought here and I can start building a budget. If this is a weakness, I want to know what my costs are, so I'm going to right-click on this and add an attachment and start that spreadsheet on my costs as well. And I can, of course, save that, and that gets saved back in the brain. And, now I've got that particular spreadsheet as well. And, I can continue to talk about opportunities. Maybe we have opportunities with existing partners. And then threats might be, competitors. I'll just put in here. There might be some competitive jackets, that we need to research. So now you can see how quickly I'm starting to build a new SWOT analysis in just a couple minutes. And this is really going to help you. And again, this is not just an academic exercise. Once you've identified your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, you get them in the brain, you can start dragging and dropping information from your desktop, linking to folders, linking to that research, and really building a solid knowledge base that's going to help you make a decision. And now we're going to get back to some Q&A. When appropriate, can you do the Twitter thing again? Question from James. Absolutely, because I do love that feature, and that's one of the things I love about the Brain 8 is the fact that you can actually go ahead and search on the web, not just for web content, but for stuff on Twitter. So for instance, let me just go ahead and we'll call this, let's create a thought for techware. And we just want to do some techware research. So I've got this thought in my brain. And so first of all, I'm going to go up to options and just do a web search. So I just want to know kind of what the latest trends are and sort of combining, maybe we're going to look at combining some biometric sensors in this jacket and get pretty tech in our next development. So to James's question, if I go up to options, and I select Twitter search. Now what that does is that enables you to do a full search on the thought. So I can create a thought. Let me just go back to options, Twitter search. And I can actually come right in here and type in techware. And I can do one of two things. I can actually add to make it a hashtag, and it puts a hashtag in. I can preview it, or I can create a thought right away if I know I want that in there. So what I did last time is I hit preview so that I could actually look and see, like, is this a valid hashtag, which it looks like it is. There's lots of stuff on techware. I like that. So in that case, I'm going to go ahead and create the thought. So what that does is it automatically takes that hashtag, connects it to that Twitter search. So now I've got my techware Twitter search right there. So anything that's going to come up on that hashtag of techware will come up. And, this might be something in opportunities. I want to link this under opportunities as well. So when I'm thinking about opportunities, I'm thinking about my existing partners, and I've got that Twitter integration right there. So that's the way that's done. And with that, we're going to try and get back to link types, because in terms of these predictive thought networks, it's actually very cool to specify how things are connected and the type of connection.
Fantastic.
And I'm going to pass the presenter back to you.
Great. So I really want to split into two main sections of decision making and impact assessment. So decision management and impact assessment. And the first, I'm going to use link types and link labels for decision management. And I've got a Brain open now. I'm not so concerned with the content down below. I've got great notes and attachments and links to files and web pages in this Brain, but I'm going to minimize that and just focus on just the structure of my Brain. And this is a Brain for a pharmaceutical company, and I'm looking into medical research, our products, distributing our products. I'm mostly dealing with marketing and dealing with distributors and so forth. And you can see when I come down into medical conditions, I've got some key medical conditions that our division focuses on, and I'll just click on atrial fibrillation. And right away, you'll notice in my Brain, I've got a list of, obviously, the medical conditions, and now I've got a list of different products. And if I mouse over, I can see I've got a competitor medication, and then some of our own meds, one of which is labeled FDA approved, and one of which is labeled non-FDA approved. Depending on where this particular client or distributor or reseller called in from, that's going to dictate what information I can provide for that customer. If they're calling from within the U.S., then obviously I just want to go straight to my dialoxin thoughts, and I've got labels and history and warnings, all my information on this particular product that I can share with them about a possible medication for treating atrial fibrillation. I cannot give them LifeRx 2.0 medication is non-FDA approved. Now, if they're calling in from Europe, calling in from Canada, different restrictions may apply, and I can obviously look up that label information, and I can provide that particular piece of information. But the reason why I didn't label the thought itself, and Shelley spent a lot of time talking about thought types and thought tags, and the reason why this thought isn't a type non-FDA approved medication is because now you'll notice when I highlight this thought, it is FDA approved for coronary artery disease. So I've got a situation where it's not approved for one condition but is approved for another. So the relationship between those two items is different, and therefore it is being displayed on the actual links themselves. And let's take a look at how we set these up. I'll just go ahead and use this area for my example. So LifeRx, I've got my old label from the original product, my new updated label, and so forth. But the very first thing that I want to share with any distributor or reseller are the disclosures. These are things that people have to know right up front about this particular product. It's the primary discussion point when we open up any conversation about this product. So I'm going to click on the link between these two thoughts, and I can do a couple of things. I can edit the link if it's just a one-time description of a relationship between two thoughts, or I can set up a new link type. I think I'm going to be using this primary link type again and again in the future. I think it's going to be important for me to label what comes next in a step or a process that I'm mapping out here in the brain. So I do want to create a new link type. So I'll create a new type called primary. And now I can clearly see this is the primary next step. When I'm clicking down through the path from LifeRx, I want to go directly to that disclosure thought. And I can really make that stand out a little as well. Let me open up my tool tabs back below, and you'll see when I click on the link or any link in the brain, it changes the thought tool tab from thought to link. Notice if I click away, then I have the thought tool tab. I'm displaying all the attachments for the current active thought. But when I click on a link, then I have that link tool tab, and there's that thought type primary. I can open that up, and let's just make that really pop, really stand out. I'll give it a purple link, and you can see it just looks a little bit different there when I see it in the structure of my brain. So I know that's the primary thought that I need to get to next. We can also set up directional links as well. So links that follow a certain process or move you along, go to this step, go to that step, by simply setting up arrows on thoughts, or in some cases, one-way thoughts. So a one-way directional thought is a link that can only be seen from one direction. And I want to set up one of those for you as well. On LifeRx, you can see I've got the developer, Damien, and the expert behind the label, that's Wendy. So if I ever have questions how this product was developed, we need the technical answer, we can probably get in contact with Damien. But if we just want to talk about the labeling, the legality of the product, and can it be taken with this and so forth, Wendy knows all about the label. She's the person to go to. But also we've got another resource available to us. We have an employee, that is Laura. So I'll link up Laura. And her relationship to LifeRx 2.0 is actually that she has been prescribed LifeRx 2.0. So we actually have someone on staff that is been prescribed this medication, so has some personal experience with it. And that's really a great resource if we want Laura to actually talk to some of our clients and put their mind at ease about this product and how well it works and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a link for Laura. And in this case, I'm just going to edit the existing link, and I'll simply call it takes. This is a one-time link, so I'm not setting up a link type. I'm just labeling this particular link. So you can see, oops, I clicked the X instead. Let me do that one more time. I'm editing the link, or I can say taking. So Laura is taking LifeRx 2.0. But I want to go one step further. I have this link highlighted, and down below on that link tool tab, I am going to set up a direction. So I click on the little arrow. This is the toggle switch. I click it again. It takes the arrow the other direction. But I only want to see Laura show up from LifeRx. When I'm on the Laura thought, I don't need to know that she's taking LifeRx. When I'm on the Laura thought, it's probably to assign her a new task at work or check in with her projects that she's working on. But I don't need to see that she's also taking LifeRx. That's a helpful thing to know only when I'm on the LifeRx thought. So I check the one-way box. And what that does is, now that I've set everything up, I've got a one-way directional link from LifeRx to Laura. So anytime I come down to LifeRx, I'll see that Laura is taking LifeRx, as you can see. However, if I go to Scout Laboratories and I'll go over to my team members and down onto my sales team, there's Laura. I'll click on her and I can see her meeting notes, the research she's working on, her tasks, but that link from LifeRx to Laura is not being displayed. That's a one-way link. It only shows up coming from, in this scenario, the LifeRx link. Right now, I just need to focus on Laura's tasks and what our sales team is working on, not that she has been prescribed a particular medication. That only comes in handy coming from the other direction. So those are a couple of different ways that you can use link labels and directional links. One other example I'm going to show you really quickly, and I know we're out of time. I've got two more examples to show you quickly. This is really, really great. This is our new client sign-on procedure. Anytime we have a new distributor or a new client for our products, this is the process that our sales team follows. First, we have a face-to-face meeting with this customer. Was it a success, yes or no? As you can see, it's going to take me in a different direction. If it's no, the meeting was not a success, they're not signing on, we need to finesse the deal. And I've got notes down below on different documents that I need to send them and so forth. And the next step beyond that is the 2-month check-in. Was the 2-month check-in a success, yes or no? If it was, great, we're moving on to sending non-disclosure forms, and now this is where things get a little complicated. We've got different programs that our resellers can follow. The 1-year program, the 10-year, the 5-year. It's a lot to keep track of, but my brain is guiding me through this decision-making process. If the client on the phone wants to know the differences between this, that, and the other, I can quickly pull up that or contract, so the bronze contract. Betty knows more about this. She's in the finance department. If there are disputes, what process we follow there. So this area of the same brain is actually guiding me through a sales process. This decision-making process is actually scripted out for me so that, number one, I can have access to all the information I need, but also so that there's unity within our team. No matter who the client talks to, when they call back in, we know what step they're on along the way and the step to take next. So we're all following the same business process. So just another great way that those links, link labels, and link types can help us along the way. And then finally, I also mentioned that I wanted to share with you impact assessment. And this is a really, really fantastic example of impact assessment within the brain, utilizing the relationships that the brain is capable of displaying for us. Here, in this particular brain, I've mapped out my IT network map. It is incredibly useful in helping me visualize everything that's going on within my IT team. I'm pretty low on the totem pole for an IT member into this organization. So I've mapped everything out in the brain. So number one, don't forget it, don't lose track, but also I can see and visualize what is going to happen when a certain event takes place. So for this example, I'm going to streamline this really quickly. I'm just going to go into servers by location. Let's say our Los Angeles office is experiencing a power outage. Not entirely uncommon to happen in Los Angeles. So when the power goes out, how are we impacted? What is going to happen next? And as you can see, I've got several servers running in my Los Angeles office. I'm going to once again, here I'm going to go full screen with the brain and minimize my tool tabs down below. So I'm just focused here on the content. And Shelley showed us earlier some of the great views we have, the outline view and expanded views. In this case, I'm just going to click on the plus sign here on the brain to show me an additional generation away from the active thought. So 2 generations away from the active thought. I know right away when the power goes out in Los Angeles, these are the servers that are go down. And look right next to these. Linked to these are the actual applications that they are hosting. So I instantly have a visual on all the different applications that are going to be affected. And if I want to take that one step further, let's say we're just doing some research on AppSO2. AppSO2 server is going down. That will affect our SAP CRM application. And from this thought, I can see the database that will need to be restarted once the server is back up and running, and the actual user community that is going to be affected. There's no reason to send out an entire email to my entire company if I know just this machine is going down. I only need to contact my IT support center, let them know of the change, but also contact the folks that are in charge of the database. So this is the ACT 2K6 database that runs on a server in our Hong Kong office. And I can see that Nick Brown, the manager of the Hong Kong office, so I'm going to let him know that a server that he is not necessarily directly affiliated with is going to be restarting, which affects an app, which is connected to one of his databases that he's responsible for. So automatically, even without knowing password for password every step along the way and being able to do these tasks myself, without knowing all that, I at least have the IT map visualized, and so I know what it's going to affect and who is responsible, because I've taken the time to connect all of these people to their tasks, to their, in this case, their servers, applications, and databases, and so forth. So an invaluable tool for me now moving forward as my IT team grows and our responsibilities grow and we gain new servers. I simply map those out in the database, and everyone on my team, if I'm sharing this brain with them, will have access to this valuable information. So, Shelley, I know we were short on time. We're well over the hour, but I wanted to really quickly demonstrate how the links and relationships in the brain are an invaluable tool in visualizing all of our decision-making processes and impact assessments.
Fabulous, and what an excellent example, especially with IT, the many-to-many relationships. And in fact, John had a question as far as, can you save a certain view? So I think this particular example, because you've got so many many-to-many relationships, if you want to maybe go into expanded view and get the configuration of a Los Angeles server or what have you, and show everyone on the call how to save the expanded view, that's great. And this is a very common application. We have a lot of IT managers that use the brain for impact assessment, network mapping and so forth. So I'm really glad we did get to this example.
Great. So here I've just really quickly gone into creating a new expanded view. So I click on New Expanded View. And to give you just sort of a quick tutorial on expanded view, you'll notice when I hover over a thought, I get a little plus and minus sign at the top, expand and collapse. So if I hover over collapse, I see what thoughts are going to go away. There's a line that goes through the thoughts that will disappear when I hover over the minus sign. And if I click on the plus, then obviously that really expands databases, was a pretty big one, so I'll put that in the upper right-hand corner. But I can just drop thoughts exactly where I want them to appear on the screen and then click the background and move them up or down. And obviously I'm broadcasting today in a very low resolution so that those pixels go through the internet quickly. The larger screen you have, the more powerful these expanded views can be. I really like this view. I want to save this to review this with my IT support team. And so I'm just going to go up to View and click to Save Expanded View. And I'll call that IT support team. I can say OK. Then I can go back to what I was doing. I'm going to go back to normal view and continue on with my business day. And when that IT support meeting happens tonight at 5 o'clock, I can really quickly go into View and I can load an expanded view. You can see I've got quite a few. There's my IT support team view, and I go directly back to that I did earlier that I really like.
Fabulous. And then if you just want to go back to normal view, I think another important aspect with any type of contingency mapping is the quick response and using the search in combination with the visualization. So maybe just do a quick search, an instant search, maybe even a more advanced search, just to show users. Because again, we would be remiss, yes, you will be navigating visually, but a lot of times in a crisis situation, you're just going to do a search and boom, see all those thoughts are right there. That's what I love that instant activate for. It really gets you ready for everything, so you can shift multiple contexts very quickly.
Absolutely, and this is called our instant search results. So these thoughts that pop up right away as you're typing, they'll get more and more refined as you add additional characters. But I've just typed in loss A. I hear the power's out in Los Angeles. I want to know how is that affecting my team. So I go directly to that Los Angeles thought. If I want to do a more extensive search for Los Angeles, I type in the full word and click on search, and that is going to open up my search tab down below. And not only is it going to start searching through all of my thought names, but it's also going to search through all of the content as well. So web pages, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets. Anytime an attachment or a note or a link to some content shows up, it's actually going to appear here in my search results. So I'll have easy access to the content into my brain.
All right, great. And then we have a question earlier from Willie. Can you link directly to a video to a particular thought, just like a website? And is there a restriction to the video format to play? Well, there's a couple things. First of all, when you're using our desktop software, and that's one of the great things about us in the mind mapping space, if you will, we offer both desktop and clouding capabilities. So the cool thing about desktop is you can literally link any file, and it will launch in its native application. So if you have some weird, proprietary video player format, and you link that file to a thought, and you have the video player on your computer, it will launch in that application. But what's more common is how we link YouTube videos, and we usually just do that with a YouTube URL. So Matt, I'll let you speak to that as well.
Sure. And one of the great things about YouTube videos, the content that you get in your YouTube video, obviously you'll have access to. So let me open up. And here we've got a YouTube video. Let me just pause this. Starting in just a few seconds. So here I've got a link to a YouTube video. And this particular video obviously is going to launch in its native application. So when you link this into the brain, let's just go down to a thought, and we'll skip the ad and pause this video. So a little tutorial on Linux. And this is going to be great since maybe this is a Linux server, so I want to connect. And I just drag and drop like I would any other web page, right from the address bar, right into the brain. It names the thought, whatever the name of the video is, navigating in Linux. But the great thing about this is that when I sync this to the cloud, and it may take a little while, but I'll just let this go in the background. I'm syncing this up to the cloud. When I open this thought in the cloud, it is going to open in the content window. And that's a unique setting that we have specifically with YouTube, Vimeo, if you use Vimeo videos, as well as Wikipedia. So any attachments from Vimeo, Wikipedia, or YouTube, again, here in the brain, they're going to launch in their native application. So this launches here in my web browser.
You mean the Brain desktop?
But, yes, excuse me, here in the Brain desktop, it launches in the web browser. But in my online version of the Brain that's in the Brain cloud, that's actually going to open in the content window. And I'll see if I can get that. If the sync completes in time, I'll see if I can open that to show you the side-by-side comparison.
Sure, and meanwhile, we can move on to a few other questions. We had some other questions from Willie. How can you get a list of all the files corresponding to each thought as well as your file? So that's something, Willie, in the Thought tab, when the thought is activated, Matt, if you tab over to the Thought tab, that's actually going to show you what files are attached to that thought. And we actually didn't get into this. This is when it's great when you have multiple versions. You'll see each version listed there, and you can have multiple thought files attached to a single thought, or you can have one file per thought. It really doesn't matter. And we also have some very interesting reports. So if you want to do reports on what are all the PDFs in my brain, for instance, or all my Excel files. And Matt, I don't know if you have a lot of files in this brain or if you want to go to another brain, but these are reports that you can actually do to see all the files that are in a particular brain.
So there, I've just run that same report Shelley was talking about. Show me all thoughts that have a PowerPoint attachment. And as you can see, there are 24 thoughts in this rather large brain. If I go back to the settings, there are 2,288 thoughts in this brain, but I'm maybe looking for just a Word document that was attached in the last week. So I'll say, show me all thoughts with attachments that are .doc, and that's 75. That's still a lot of content to sift through. So I'm
and now, Matt, can you tell, James had a question, can I tell which one of those files are internal versus external?
There's another report for that as well, yes. And you can run a customized report if you want to do both. Show me all documents that are internal. You can set that up with customize. But you can also go to special, show me all, or excuse me, go back to attachments and show me all internal or external attachments. This is a great exercise if you're syncing your brain to the cloud and you want to make sure before you sync you don't have any external attachments. A link to something on your C drive that obviously wouldn't be there when it opens up from another machine or from the cloud. So you want to move that internally. You want to first find all thoughts that have external attachments. As you can see, I like to keep all of my thoughts internal. So I have 0 thoughts with, that are pointing to something on my desktop or somewhere on my C drive. I move all my thoughts internally. So I've got
and there's actually a new report that we did in the Brain 8 specifically so you could move shortcuts into the brain and look at broken links and broken shortcuts too. We can cover, if you want to talk about that as well.
Sure. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that's a utility that we created. If you run into that where you're seeing, oh my gosh, I've got so many external thoughts or so many thoughts that are pointing to the wrong direction, location, and I need to move those into my brain, you can actually go down to utilities and run this utility for replace attachment locations or move external attachments into the brain. So in one fell swoop, I've got 200 external thoughts. That's not good. I need them all in my brain, sync my brain to the cloud. That's a utility that you would run here under File, Utilities, and move external attachments into brain. So a couple of great utilities that you can utilize there as well. And really quickly, finally, on the reports, you can always set up, like I said, those customized reports. So you can say, all right, show me all thoughts that are of a certain thought type and have the certain link types and tags as well as attachments and so forth. So there's a lot of different customizations, and you can save different custom reports to run them again and again in the future as your brain continues to evolve.
Right, and just to preference that, just to step back for some of the new users, the reason now the brain is data agnostic, like especially if you're just using it on your desktop, if you're just linking to a shared folder directory or you link to a file on your hard drive, no problem. We don't actually necessarily, the brain doesn't care where things are stored. It just wants you to see everything conceptually. However, that being said, if you are synchronizing your data across the cloud to multiple machines, if you just have a file linked as a shortcut, then, that means it's not stored internally in the brain. We can't grab that file just like Dropbox or Google Drive couldn't grab a shortcut either if you're not on that computer. So if you are, sharing your brain with other people or synchronizing across multiple machines, that's where, you on drag and drop, you either want to copy or store that file internally. And that way you can access it from multiple computers. Now, another question on publishing from James. Question, I use the brain for teaching a course and my students look at it via public web. Awesome. Excellent example. We have a lot of teachers that do this. However, he states, the public brain starts in different places every time. How do I get it to start on the home thought? I think by setting the home thought, it should start on the home thought, or is that?
Well, there's two different options, and this might be something that, James, that you may have overlooked. Let me go into a brain example. So this is the brain that I was in earlier, Scout Laboratories. This is the brain with all of the different medical conditions and medications and so forth. Let's say I want to share this brain with everyone on my sales team, and I always want them to start right here, Scout Laboratories. That's the thought that I want them to start from. When I right-click on the background, and now please notice that I'm not on the desktop version of the brain. I'm in my browser. So I'm running Google Chrome, and I'm online looking at the online version of this brain. So I right-click on the background, and I go into Share. There are two options. I can share this thought, or I can share this brain. So there's two different ways to get directly into my brain. If my home thought is the sales thought or just a different thought in the brain, if I send them a link to this brain, they're going to start from that other home thought. That's not what I'm looking for. I want them to start from Scout Laboratories, whether it's my home thought or not. So I want to send them the URL for this thought, Scout Laboratories. If that is the URL that your colleagues have, that's always the thought that you're going to go to.
And just to be clear as well, on the desktop version, make sure your home thought is set as the top thought. So Matt, if you just want to show people how to set your home thought. And then just to add to that, in addition, another best practice for publishing your brain, I always recommend pins to 3 or 4 of the key areas in your brain, and the pins appear at the top of your screen. So before you publish, set your home thought and select some pins so that people have, 3 or 4 key sections in the brain. So if they're navigating around and they get lost or whatever, they can always click on those pins at the top as well.
That's right. And so to set the home thought, you simply right-click on a thought here on your desktop, and I select Set Home Thought. So I can do that to my Los Angeles thought, if that's where I want everyone I'm sharing my brain with to start from. Or I can navigate all the way back up to the My Brain Thought, right-click, and select to Set as Home Thought. And to test what your home thought is from the desktop version, there's a little picture of a house in the upper right-hand corner. Go ahead and click on it, and it's going to take you directly to what is currently set to your home thought. And for me, that is this My Brain Thought.
Okay, and then just to clarify, James says he wasn't getting the options when you right-click. So just to verify, and we're happy to troubleshoot this with you on a private meeting, James, Matt was on the cloud version. So it's on the cloud version where you get the sharing options, where you right-click and get the URLs. On the desktop version, you actually won't. You can share a URL from the desktop, but that's in the menu system. So when you right-clicked on Scout Laboratories to get those thought URLs, in order to do that, you need to be on your online brain.
Yeah, so make sure that brain is synced to the cloud. Visit that brain by going to thebrain.com and log in with your credentials. You'll get to your account page. You can open any brain you'd like and right-click on the background to go into Share and acquire that. It's a nice abbreviated URL, as you can see, much shorter than the URL.
Yeah, and so this is a good example. You can see both. So you've got the online brain where it's in the browser, and that's where when you're online you get these different options, and then you've got the desktop brain, which of course isn't in the browser, and you have just the menu options. But when you talk a little bit more about that, web and desktop brains in our 101 class, and we're always happy to go further into detail with anyone, through a support meeting. So I think with that, we're going to end today's session. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. We do have some other additional events coming up, so stay tuned for future brain technology events. And before we end the session, Matt, any final words of wisdom for mind mapping future trends and predictive thought networks for the group here?
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. And I think that one of the key takeaways from today's webinar is you've got a lot of different options with thought types, link types, tags don't be afraid to start using them. You can always go back and modify and do some house cleaning at a later date, but you'll be really surprised. You start mapping out those future ideas, market trends that are related to your business, and you'll be really, really surprised at how quickly your brain can grow.
Right, and I also think it's kind of cool because it really does enable you to get a degree of control on otherwise uncontrollable variables. So you may not be able to control what's happening in the Asian markets, but by mapping it all out conceptually, the knowledge, as they say, knowledge is power. So you're going to be empowered to act more intelligently, more responsibly, and it's also fun. We have all kinds of things coming up, with elections and markets and year end, mapping out your business trends. So it can also just be a fun exercise for those of you that like to kind of be forward-looking, and it's something that a lot of people don't think about, and then they add this section, even if it's just for personal knowledge in their brain on, who's going to be the next U.S. president or, this or that. It just becomes a really fun area, and it grows into something, quite interesting and almost bigger than the sum of its parts. So do keep us posted on your progress, and if you guys have any interesting brains you'd like to share with us, do email us at support@thebrain.com, and we'd love to see them. And with that, we're going to end today's session. For those of you that, we've gone a little bit fast because this was an advanced topic more about predictive thought networks. If you guys need to a couple of you on the call or whatever need to take it down a couple levels and just know, how do I get started with my basic brain? That's what the Brain 101 classes are for. We have them every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time. So we have a class tomorrow. It's a little bit more of a systematic, broad brush view on the functionality. It's also a great class for users who, for whatever reason, can't remember how to do it. You can even pop in just the last 15 minutes of the class. We have interactive Q&A, and due to the class size, they tend to be a little bit smaller than our web events. We can go much more in-depth into demoing questions there, so do feel free to sign up for that. And with that, I'm going to end today's session. I'd like to wish you all well in mind mapping your future trends, and hope to see you on a future Brain Technologies event. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.